everybody. Happy Eclipse. I'm just waiting for it to go live on my phone and make sure everything's good. I have been having major internet issues the past couple weeks. I'm going to end up switching providers. Okay, it looks like I just went live. Perfect. Oh, I forgot to do the subtitles. Is it too late? Oh, it's too late. Dang it. Sorry, guys. I literally cannot listen to anything without subtitles, but it looks like this video is not gonna have it. But the sound is good. Perfect. All right. Welcome to all of our new Patreon members. I'm gonna release this video on YouTube later, so hi to those of you watching this later on YouTube. Okay, hold on. Where is the chat? Why can't I find it? Okay. Hi, welcome to those of you watching this later on YouTube. We are going to be diving into a whole bunch of just seemingly random things that all happen to be connected. This eclipse took me in some very unexpected places. Maybe it's the Yod aspect, the finger of God aspect to Uranus, the planet of unexpected, or the fact that it's just majorly aspecting my chart, but I don't know. But I uncovered a whole bunch of random things about this area of the sky, so we're going to go a whole bunch of places. But before we do, I want to welcome our new members to Patreon. Hi guys. For those of you who are new, make sure you read the post over on Patreon and you have your natal chart with you. Print out the apprentice cheat sheet and make sure you have like all the things that are listed on there so you can follow along with your chart. For those of you watching this later on YouTube, if you would like to join Patreon, the link to join is down below. It's a sliding scale. You can pay whatever you want and you have access to all the videos. Okay? We're going to get weird. We're going to go a lot of places. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hi, Mello. Share my screen. Okay. And before we dive into the slides for this video and literally like all of these web pages here, we're going a lot of places, you guys. I'm telling you, we're going a lot of places. Hi, Millie. I want to first talk about the timing of this eclipse and how you can find it for your location. This eclipse is going to be able to be seen through pretty much most of the Americas, North and South America. The website time and date is a really great place to find the exact time to view this eclipse for your location. So like I typed it in for Los Angeles, you would type it in for your location and you would get a map of like where you are and the percentage that you'll be able to see. I think I'm in the 70%. So it's a total annular ring of fire eclipse. The moon will be going completely in front of the sun, but the moon is at its apogee, so it's farther away. And so it is somewhat smaller. So when it goes in front of the sun, it is a little bit smaller than the sun, and so it doesn't completely block out the sun's light. It has this ring of fire around it. I was actually born right after one of these, which I guess is part of the exact same Soro cycle as this one. It does make sense, seeing as though I'm heading into my nodal return, which is an 18-year cycle, just like a Soro cycle, but we'll get to that a little bit later. You want to look up for your location, how you'll be able to see this eclipse, and the timing. So like for me, the eclipse starts around like 8 o'clock in the morning. The best time to see it is like around 9 9:30, right? And then it ends around 9:50. Now for me, because of my location, it's not going to be a perfect ring of fire. I'll be able to see like the 70%. So it'll be like a crescent. This is kind of a given, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You don't look at the sun with your eyes. You actually, even if you did look up at it with your eyes, unless you were in like the zone of totality, you wouldn't even be able to tell there is an eclipse because the sun is so bright. You need eclipse glasses and or an eclipse viewer, which you can make with, okay, hey, buddy, no barking. No barking. Hold on. He learned how to bark the other day. He didn't know until the other day. Okay, you're going to have to go with your daddy if you can't. You buddy. No. Come here. Come on. You going to be good? Want to say hi to the internet? Alf. Come on. No. I know. Okay, give me... Hold on one second. I'm just going to put him out here and text Eddie. He's in the garage. Okay, buddy. No, you can't bark. Come on, go to your daddy. There. Okay, he's barking. Okay. Okay. All right, buddy. You be good. Your daddy will be right back. He literally didn't even know how to bark until the other day when we went to a pet fair and the other dogs were barking, and then he was like watching them and he was like, oh, what is this? And so now he has like this little bark that he does anytime anybody walks by the door. But obviously don't look at the eclipse. You can make an eclipse viewer very easily. You probably did this maybe when you were in school with like a shoebox or a toilet paper roll. There's a couple of different ways. You can Google it. Don't look up at the sun, right? All right, so type this in for your location, figure out when the best time is for you to see. You're going to have to live somewhere here, right? So if you're over here in Europe or Africa, like you're not going to be able to see this one, okay? And this website is really great. It really gives you like all the specifics for each city and like the best time to view it. I use this website every time there is an eclipse. All right, let's go over here to the slides for this. The barking, yeah. All right, so here is our thumbnail. We are literally going to go so many places here tonight, you guys. I can't even begin to explain this slide to you, so I guess we may as well just kind of dive into it. We'll get all these places eventually. So yeah, grab your chart and you're going to want to look and see where Libra falls in your chart. What house does Libra fall in? This is where this eclipse is going to be falling. This is going to be the focal point of this eclipse cycle that we are in the midst of. There's a lot of change on the horizon for this area of your life. You may as well look and see the opposite house as well, where Aries falls, because we're in the midst of an Aries Libra eclipse cycle. We have the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra, and this is where many of our eclipses fall over the next like year and a half. So look and see what house that falls in. For me, it is my second house, and I have my sun there, I have my Venus there, and I have my South Node there. It is my nodal return, although my nodes are over at the other end of Libra, so it's not exactly just yet, but I'm in the midst of it. So these eclipses are pivotal for me. If you were born near 87, give or take a little bit, this is your nodal return as well. If you have your North Node in Aries and your South Node in Libra. And so for me, this is really highlighting the 8th house, 2nd house axis in my chart and a plethora of my planets. So you want to look and see, do you have any planets there? Do you have any planets near 21 degrees of Libra. That's where this eclipse falls. The sun and moon will be at 21 degrees at the time of this eclipse. But really, do you have any planets in Libra at all? Because we have the sun and moon over at 21 degrees. We have the nodes over at like 24, 25 degrees. And then we have Mercury over at, I think it's like 13 or 15 degrees. I don't know. We'll see when we get to the chart. So much of those cardinal signs are being hit right now and have been for quite a while, or will be activated during some point in time during this eclipse cycle. So you can get a jump ahead, right? Look and see, where does Libra fall? Where does Aries fall? What houses does this fall in? This is the area of your life where you're going to be experiencing this very fated, massive new beginning, and the changes that are on the horizon, right? So you want to look and see, do you have any planets near 21 degrees of the cardinal signs? So this is Libra, Aries, Capricorn, or Cancer. These are the signs that sit in a square to each other. So if you have any planets near 21 degrees of any one of those 4 cardinal signs, that planet is either in conjunction, square, or opposition to this eclipse. If it's in Libra, it's conjunct this eclipse, channeling that energy into your reality. If it's in Aries, it's in opposition to this eclipse over there with the North Node, and really something that you're working to strive towards and something that you're working to integrate, right? And if you have planets near 21 degrees of Capricorn or Cancer, or really even into the later degrees of Capricorn because Pluto is there, then those planets are sitting in a square to this moon. Those are the signs that are the most strongly activated by this eclipse. Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, and Libra, the cardinal signs. Those are the aspects that we feel most strongly, right? So you really want to look and see, do you have any planets there? And then look to see what house that is, what area of your life that is, because it is going to be a player in this eclipse energy. Now, this is a very brief description of what the houses represent. The Apprentice cheat sheet, for those of you who are Patreon members, gives you a little bit deeper look. It also gives you a little bit of a look at what each of those planets might mean, like your Mars. Let's say your Mars falls here. That really is going to denote some sort of action, right? That could really make for a fiery, intense, even more intense than eclipse season already is, energy. It could heighten aggression or anger or drive or motivation, right? If it's Venus, it could have, especially while in Libra, it will have a very strong connection or effect on your relationships, right? And looking to see what planet is aspecting this moon, and then looking to see what that planet represents through the Apprentice cheat sheet or Google, which, I mean, is pretty lame and you're not going to get the depth of information. I prefer books, but Google is somewhat of your friend, and you can just kind of Google the house, right? And then you can look and see, do you have any planets near 21 degrees of the other air signs? So that's down there at the bottom, the little green glyphs, Gemini or Aquarius. If you have planets near 21 degrees of Gemini or Aquarius, these are sitting in a trine, in a harmonious aspect with this eclipse. And they're really there to lend this sort of harmonious, free-flowing energy to the changes that this eclipse is going to usher in to your reality, okay? Mellow, I always call you Mellow when I see you here, but hi, Sarah. She says, my Venus is there in the 3rd house, and it's being hit exactly at 21 degrees. I cannot wrap my head around if this house, and I can't wrap my head around if this house and aspect. So your Venus is in Libra, it's in the 3rd house, and it is conjunct this moon. Yes? Okay, well, your 3rd house is the house of communication It is the house of information. It is the house of the mind. It also has a lot to do with siblings, and like our early education, right? So Venus is the planet of relationships, values, money. And so this eclipse could be triggering some sort of like needed communication when it comes to perhaps even your siblings or just your relationships in general. And yeah, this change in that area of your life is being guided by the hand of fate. And this eclipse series is going to have a strong effect on your value systems, your finances, and your relationships. Daisy, hi Daisy. She says Libra is her first house. So the house of the self. Oh yeah, we just had a session. This is right on your ascendant, right? Am I right? I can't remember. I literally have the notes right here. I could look. But Daisy says it's in her first house. She has Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto all in Libra. Wow, you're definitely going to be feeling this all throughout. I don't know what degrees those are at, but you're going to be feeling this all throughout this eclipse cycle. This is going to revolve around learning and communication and expansion, and a little retraction and a lot of transformation because of that Pluto aspect. All right, let's move on. So, let's cover Libra, and then we'll dive into where exactly this is in the sky. We're going to go off on like a whole bunch of tangents, and then we'll come back around to the chart. It's going to be a minute before we actually get to the chart. So let's just cover the basics of Libra. If you guys are Patreon members, we have covered Libra in depth in previous videos, all of which are available to you over on Patreon. You can search up at the top in the search bar Libra, and all the previous Libra videos will pop up. And in each one of them, there was some sort of in-depth rabbit hole where we explored the archetype of Libra from a different angle. We're going to kind of gloss over it here. This is an eclipse. It's guided by fate. It's guided by destiny. There's not much we need to do other than pay attention to where it is we're being guided towards, right? What it is we're being shown. So Libra is one of the 4 cardinal signs. These are the signs that start the season. Hi, Kimberly. These are the signs that start the season. Libra starts fall here in the northern hemisphere. The cardinal signs are said to be initiatory in energy because they start things. The fixed signs sit mid-season. They hold steadfast in the energy. The mutable signs, they sit at the end of the season. They shift into the next sign. They're shifting into something new. The cardinal signs are initiatory. So solar eclipse is a new moon. A new moon is an initiatory time of new beginnings. New things are sparked into our reality that culminate 6 months later. Now this happens to be a new moon that is a solar eclipse. So it's a supercharged new moon, a supercharged initiatory new beginning. Plus it's in a cardinal sign, which has that energy about it as well, of starting, of sparking, of a new chapter, a new story, right? Now this is a south node eclipse, which tends to have a strong focus on the past, but it's a new moon eclipse, so it's a new story, a new chapter when it comes to the like lingering energy of the past. So it's interesting that in tonight's video we're going to be diving into the past, but through the lens of today, right? Which is very much how this is going to be showing up in your reality, through the lens of the past, but how it is showing up today. So Libra is the air sign of the cardinal sign. So it is initiatory air. It is initiatory mental energy. It is focused on the mind. It is focused on communication. It is focused on that sort of mental space. Libra, while it is Venus ruled and often very much stereotypically associated with a feminine Venusian type of energy. Libra is an air sign, so it is actually of the masculine yang, positive polarity. So it is very projecting in its energy. It is very outward focused. So the ruling planet of Libra is Venus. Who said their Venus is here? Mellow, your Venus is here. So this is very much the energy of your eclipse, right? This is how it's very much going to be showing up in your reality. But we're all feeling this in some way because Venus governs Libra. Now Venus is over in Virgo right now. It'll make it into Libra eventually. It moved into Virgo on the 8th. And immediately started to oppose Saturn retrograde over in Pisces. But eventually it will make it over to Libra. But this energy is still associated with the Libra archetype, with Libra season, which we are in, and the energy of this entire eclipse cycle. So Venus is the planet of love, of art, of creativity, of our personal mental relationships. It's the planet of balance and harmony and beauty and attraction and desire, values, sensuality, that which attracts or repels us, our aesthetic, and how we respond to such triggers. Venus represents what we love and value, and Mars, which is the ruler of the opposite sign to Libra, Aries, is how we fight for what we love and what we value. Mars is over in Scorpio right now. It just left Libra and entered Scorpio. It's still within orb to a conjunction to the South Node. It's at like 0 degrees of Scorpio. The first couple degrees. I don't know where it's at. We'll have to wait till we get to the chart, but it's like right there. So it's in the depths. It's in the depths of our psyche. It's in the depths of transformation, and it's really feeling intense emotions right now at the time of this eclipse. So Libra traditionally governs the 7th house. If you are an Aries rising, Libra will fall in your 7th house. If you are any other rising sign, it's going to fall in another house. But during Libra season and during Libra transits, we all still kind of feel this general 7th house energy because Libra just governs this stuff. But we feel more so the house in our reality, in our chart, that is highlighted, right? So for me, it would be my 2nd house, but my Venus is there and it's Libra. So my 2nd house is entangled within relationships and partnerships and all of these things, right? So the 7th house is the house of relationships, partnerships, and contracts with others. One-on-one encounters with others. Any one-on-one encounter. Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, represents the self, and Libra, its opposite sign, represents the other, any other, a romantic other, a business other, an enemy even. This is the house of marriage, lawsuits, open enemies, the public, and how one cooperates or competes with others, okay? Some keywords that are associated with Libra are thoughts that connect you and me. Seeking balance. This is the strategist, but this energy is ambivalent. They're the artist, and they have the ability to understand both sides of the coin. So I always like to explain the 3 air signs like this. And Gemini, the first air sign, represents both sides of the coin, but like independent of each other. Libra represents the coin, right? She realizes that both sides are connected, and she is the coin itself, balanced, right? Between light and dark, much like the time of year that Libra governs, this cardinal energy, the initiation of fall, the fall equinox, and this balance between light and darkness. So Libra, Gemini represents the 2 sides of the coin who don't really yet realize they are one. Libra represents the coin, And then Aquarius, the final air sign, is like the dude holding the coin, right? So Libra is diplomatic and focused on others, but this energy is said to be somewhat indecisive, but only because we, I have a Libra stellium, we are just not quick to pick a side. We know we are the coin, and usually, more often than not, both sides are wrong. And so sometimes indecision is the best decision because both of the decisions presented to you are inaccurate or wrong, right? So Libra is peace oriented and charming and romantic and idealistic and far-sighted. But on the flip side, they can often be resentful, highly susceptible to flattery, easily influenced, and overly flirtatious. I always like to say, honestly, we're just really nice and charming, and people take it the wrong way. But I guess some Libras could be like that. I could definitely see that. But usually people just kind of take it the wrong way because we're just so nice and talkative and charming and friendly. When we want to be. We definitely have a flip side, right? Much like the coin. All right, so herbs that are associated with Libra are daisy, mint, yarrow, and rose. And in the world, according to mundane astrology, Libra governs relationships with other countries, treaties, diplomatic initiatives, and wars. It also reveals national characteristics that a country projects onto its enemies. Like, this is just a summary of the energy we are already in and the energy of the weekend ahead. You can expect to hear countries of the world saying things about other countries of the world that they themselves are very much doing and partaking in. The projections are going to be undeniable. And this eclipse will very much reveal some of those. Now, Libra governs treaties, diplomatic relationships between countries, and war. And this is an eclipse, a ring of fire eclipse that crosses across America at a very pivotal time when it comes to transits. Pluto just stationed direct right on top of America's Pluto, about to close out the tail end of America's 250-year transit of its Pluto return. Hasn't been there since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And there are a lot of very intense world events happening right now that we'll talk about as we continue on. I mean, this moon is literally conjunct the asteroid Israel, the asteroid Crimea, the asteroid Isis, which can be associated with the goddess Isis and or the terrorist organization, the asteroid 666, as well as several others. So it's going to be intense on the world stage. But, you know, the hand of fate is behind this. And so regardless of what kind of agenda chess moves the powers that want to make during this time, I don't know, there's some very interesting aspects to this moon that might help humanity out, but we'll get there in a little bit. All right, so those of you who are Patreon members, you have access to all of these videos where we've talked about this before. In this sign of Libra, there are a lot of things that are significant, and now I've discovered even more, and we're going to get there in a second. There is the Supergalactic Center, M87. If you want to know about this, there's a video linked down below. That's a Patreon only video, but you guys who watch this on YouTube, you can click on it and watch it. It's just a YouTube link. We talk all about that, the astrology of black holes, in that video. But the Supergalactic Center is the black hole that the Milky Way, the Andromeda Galaxy, and 130 other galaxies all rotate around. It sits right at the start of Libra, right at the near the equinox degree, and it kickstarts this profound sign, which of course I am biased towards because I have a million things there, planets and whatnot, but my sun aligns with the supergalactic center, so like, I mean, I'm biased, but I think this sign is very cool. There is also the Boots super void, which is this huge, seemingly empty part of space that doesn't have any, seems to not have any stars in it. This area of the sky also has super clusters. So Libra, the sign of balance between light and dark, houses some of the biggest super void in the sky, and also some of the biggest super clusters, so dense clusters of stars in the sky as well, really representing that balance, that harmony. There's also the hidden or lost or forgotten divine child and mother constellation, sometimes known as Coma, that we have touched on several times over on Patreon. That was later erased during the time of Alexandria and replaced with the wig of the queen. This sits in Libra. In the zodiacal cosmic man, Libra represents the stomach, or sometimes even the womb of the celestial man. And then Libra sits opposite the Andromeda galaxy, our closest neighbor, the which the North Node is aligned with right now over in Aries. The Andromeda galaxy sits at 27 degrees of Aries, conjunct the North Node. This is our closest galactic neighbor, and it's currently shooting through the sky towards the Milky Way. Some astronomers say that their outer gases have already started to merge, and in 4.5 billion years, their black holes are going to collide and merge and create a super galaxy. So the sign of the self, Aries, and the sign of Libra are aligned with the Andromeda galaxy, which is associated with the divine union, much like Libra. And Aries, the self, you can't have a union without a self, right? All right, so all of this stuff is already in Libra, all of the stuff we already know, and now I have discovered more, and we're going to get into that now after I check in with this chat. You guys, I have like something stuck in my throat. I can't like clear it. Kathleen says, I'm so interested in galactic aspects here. I don't have any planets here, but okay. I don't know where that was trailing off to, Kathleen. Mello says, does that mean something Venusian will be removed from me via the third house? This is what I'm having trouble grasping. No. The generalization that the South Node has to do with endings, I have the South Node conjunct my sun, so again, I could be biased here, but I do not agree with that at all. I do think that it has to do with like the past, and I do think that it has to do with a deep, profound spiritual connection that's rooted in a time before, but I do not think it necessarily has to do with endings. No, I don't think something's going to necessarily be taken away from you. No. Kathleen says she has Libra in the 11th house, so that's the house of friends and groups and the collective. It also has a lot to do with like our hopes and dreams, and even money made through our career, Kathleen. And she says she has Mercury at 2 degrees, Venus at 12 degrees, and Black Moon Lilith at 22. So this is conjunct your Black Moon Lilith. So this eclipse will probably show you a lot of the repressed parts of yourself and your relationships when it comes to communication in friend groups or any sort of group of people. It can be like a work group environment. It could be your knitting circle down the way. It can be like your church group. It could be your friend group, whatever it may be. She says, so it means that Gemini is her 7th house. Yeah, so this is going to have a strong focus on that which is repressed, whether it be communication or self-expression, when it comes to you and groups of people, and or your hopes and dreams for the future, or just like your connection to the collective group mind, right? Okay, so hopefully that kind of made sense. I'd have to look at your chart to see other aspects to see, more, but that's like a general energy, as much as I can tell you guys from those sentences. All right, so we are going to go to a bunch of web pages for me to paint this very strange narrative here that has unfolded for me. So this moon falls at, oh wait, I have one more slide here before we go there. All right, so this moon falls at 21 degrees of Libra. The closest fixed star that falls in alignment with this moon is at 22 degrees of Libra, and it's called Foramen. And it falls here, smack dab in the middle of a shit ton of different nebulas, all of which are just crazier than the one before. And we're going to get into them now. But I did not know any of this until a couple of hours ago. And I've just been like blowing my mind left and right. And it's kind of crazy. So this moon falls at 22 degrees of Libra. The sun aligns with it every year around October 15th. So the day after the eclipse is its exact alignment with the star. The name Foramen means whole in Latin. And in Chinese astronomy, this star, which is also sometimes called Eta Carnea, I have no idea if I'm saying that right, but in Chinese astronomy, it translates to heaven's altar, okay? This star is really cool, you guys, in a million different ways, so we're going to get there. So fixed star Foramen, or this, is a stellar system that contains at least 2 stars. It's hard to tell because it's in the midst of like a whole bunch of crazy nebulous shit, but it contains at least 2 stars right here. And it falls in the keel of the ship, which is called the Carina constellation, but most of us know it as Argo. Argo, the ship that Jason and the Argonauts used on their quest to obtain the Golden Fleece. And it sits right below the ecliptic in Libra. So this star was previously not a very bright star. It was kind of really hard to see. It was a 4th magnitude star, which is not very impressive, okay? But it started to brighten in 1837 during what they call the Great Eruption. And it became the 2nd brightest star in the sky, second only to Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, between the 11th and the 14th of March in 1943, which is what is known as the Great Eruption. We're going to dive deeper into this right now. This is crazy, you guys. So it like exploded in the sky, looking just like a supernova. As big of an explosion as a supernova. Everybody saw it and was like, holy shit, look at this great eruption from March 11th to the 14th in 1843, right here in this area of the sky where this eclipse is, there was this huge explosion. And then it started to kind of fade again. Now, it was just as bright as a supernova, but the star did not go supernova. It didn't fully condense on itself. It didn't die. It didn't turn into a black hole. It didn't turn into a neutron star. It turned into this sort of nebulous thing. So From the 11th to the 14th of March, 1943, which is a crazy time. We are going to come back to this date. Oh my gosh, it is insane. The Great Eruption was going on. And then before fading, well below naked eye visibility, meaning you couldn't see it with your eye anymore, around 1856. It then brightened consistently since about 1940, becoming brighter than a magnitude 4.5 in around 2014. I'm going to show you a graph here in a second. But the stars of Forman are now obscured by the remnants of the Great Eruption. The keyhole or the homunculus nebula. So we're going to dive into all of those things here right now. Hold on. It's going to be a long video. All right, so before we do, here is just a little brief description of the star through the traditional lens of Western fixed star astrology, which is just lame and boring. But it says the star brings prosperity, leadership. It is the star of the divine teacher, of creative power, and it can bring ear or eye troubles. Indecision, I mean, Libra is doing that, or shipwreck, because it's in the ship, right? And it's a fortunate star that is associated with Saturn and Jupiter. I always hold like a very little credence to the traditional fixed star breakdowns. Like, oh, it's going to give you a shipwreck. Your eyes are going to go bad. Your head is going to fall off. This is going to bring glamour. Like, it's just lame. Okay. So this is a fabulous resource. I mention this to everybody in my course. I mention this to the Patreon members all the time. This website, astrologyking.com, is fabulous for diving into constellations that aren't just the traditional zodiac, right? So this is a star in the ship. We've already read this part because this is what was on the slide. It was from this website. Here is a look at the graph. Okay, so this starts over in like the 1600s, and this is the brightness of the star, like a fourth magnitude star, not very impressive, right? It means like it's like the fourth kind of brightest of the magnitudes of brightness, right? And it's like slightly getting brighter over the 1700s and like into the 1800s. And then I guess this is probably 1839 when it started to really kind of spike. And in 1843, there was the Great Eruption and what looked like a supernova in the sky. This is really significant because we have not seen a supernova, an actual supernova, in like a really long time. No stars have gone supernova in our Milky Way since the 1600s. It appears that a supernova exploded in the constellation Cassiopeia about 300 years ago, around 1667 or 1680. So we really haven't had any stars like explode. Betelgeuse in Orion is expected to perhaps go supernova in our lifetime. Of course, that would mean that it actually went supernova a long time ago and the light just finally traveled to us. But we have not, as a human collective, seen any stars really go supernova. So in the 1800s, when there was this huge eruption, this great eruption, like this was a really profound moment in space and in our collective mind that really triggered so many things that are still transpiring today, which we're going to get into here in a second. Then from there, it greatly dropped in magnitude, and then slowly has been rising into where it is like still we can't very well see it, you know what I mean, because it's obscured by the remnants of the explosion. You can see it, of course, with very high-powered telescopes or like astrophotography equipment, right? You can get pictures that look like the one on the thumbnail. We can't really see it now. There was this huge explosion in 1843. Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out how much of like his I want to still kind of cover. If you guys want to come through and read this, you can. He talks about nebulas, because there's the homunculus nebula here as well. So he talks about nebulas causing combativeness and changeable nature, ambitiousness, headstrong. They can be self-driven, things like that. And then he cites like a bunch of more traditional astrological influences and whatnot. I want to get into this. This is an ultraviolet image of the homunculus nebula, with the star that we're talking about is like literally right here in the middle. They're not in space connected to each other. That's just how it looks from our perspective. Oh, interesting. John F. Kennedy had this conjunct his ascendant. Ooh, I didn't see this before. That's interesting. I'm a big Kennedy fan. I've always been obsessed with the Kennedys since I was young, and the conspiracies around the assassination and whatnot. All right, John Lennon too. All right, so let's dive into this area of the sky. So this area of the sky is what is called the Carina Nebula. So it's this really big nebula that houses the star, the Homunculus Nebula, and a whole bunch of other nebulas, okay? So it's called the Carina Nebula. It looks like this. This is the star. And there are a couple of different nebulas here, all of which I find archetypally significant, okay? There's the Homunculus Nebula, which is surrounding this star that we're talking about. This is the Foraman star. I don't know how to say it. Foraman star that we've been talking about. It falls right here, and this is it's surrounded by the Homunculus Nebula. We will come back to the archetype of the homunculus here in a second. Right here is the Finger of God Nebula. I find this interesting because really the only real aspects to this lunation besides the sun and moon conjunct each other, aligned with some asteroids, opposite the north node, over there with like Chiron and Eris, like this opposition, which none of which are really exact other than the eclipse itself, is a yod, which is what's known as a Finger of God aspect. So I find this archetypally significant, considering this eclipse is now associated with two different fingers of God. There's the aspect pattern that we're going to talk about when we get to the chart. And then there is this nebula right here aligned with this area of the sky called the Finger of God. And I find this significant considering we are having like pretty much another holy war transpire in the Holy Land in the Middle East right now over different Abrahamic religious faiths that ultimately, if you go back far enough, like worship the same God, yet they have a seemingly different trajectory, right? It seems like there's these two different fingers of God pointing at this eclipse right now that seem to just be from like the left hand and right hand of the one and only God energy, right? Source energy. And it's these ideologies that end up getting in the way of humanity finding peace and instead resulting towards war, right? All of the archetypes that are showing up at the time of this eclipse. So there's also a thing called the Caterpillar Nebula, and one called the Mystic Mountain, which I, of course, love. All of you Patreon members will know why I love this, because it is associated with the symbolism of the axis mundi and that polar pillar and all the stuff I talk about all the time. But okay, let's dive into this homunculus a little bit more. So the homunculus nebula looks like this. Sometimes it is referred to as the keyhole nebula. So what is an homunculus? Homunculus means little man in Latin. And we see it often in alchemy. We're actually going to come over here and watch one of Gigi Young's shorts that she did on the homunculus, and then we will read a little bit off Wikipedia. I'm just trying to get rid of some of these pages. We were going to read the technicalities of this, but pretty much the homunculus nebula is the leftover formation of that explosion, right? Okay, so if you guys are not familiar with Gigi Young on YouTube, where have you been? Just kidding. She's fabulous. I love her work. She's one of the few YouTubers I will, whose work I'll watch here and there, although I haven't really watched her stuff in a while, but I do appreciate her lens with which she views the esoteric realm. And here's a little short that she did on the homunculus.
The homunculus of alchemical lore is similar to the golem. Like the golem, the creation of the homunculus was also an attempt to create a human-like form that the magician could use to do their bidding. The same idea was also present in the occult belief that an individual could also summon a specific soul into a body or form through a particular magical rite. This can be seen with Aleister Crowley's Moonchild rite and the notorious Babylon working of NASA pioneer Jack Parsons and Scientology creator L. Ron Hubbard. The homunculus of alchemical lore is
All right, so a homunculus is Latin for little person, and it represents a small human being. They were originally depicted as small little statues made out of clay, and they have a strong connection to alchemy. When I think of the homunculus in today's terms, I think very much of artificial intelligence, of synthetic wombs, of making little drone-like beings in order to do the bidding of the wizards behind the curtain, right? This would be a really great Wikipedia page to come and read if you want to learn a little bit more about the idea of the homunculus and all of the different places it's been seen in the past. But in today's day and age, it speaks very much to the advancements in technology, which I find really interesting considering the next couple of connections I made in regards to that 1843 date. So not only is this often done through technology, let's say the creation of an artificial intelligence and putting that inside some sort of inorganic body, but then also the synthetic wombs, the synthetic embryos, and then she said, also through magical rites that are meant to incarnate a specific soul, like the Babylon workings of L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons, which we talked about in some of the rabbit hole videos here on YouTube, back during, I don't know, was it the winter rituals? I don't know, when they were using all of that symbolism. I honestly can't really remember. But the homunculus is a theme that we see throughout the occult, particularly in the realm of alchemy. Now, we can also create a little person through the divine act of union, which is what Libra in its highest manifestation represents. Union between light and dark, marriage, partnership, divine alchemical union that ultimately creates a child, a love child, right? As opposed to something created through black magic or technology, but created through the act of love. So that is the highest manifestation of this energy, but it's definitely not how the elites would see this. All right, so I'm like, all right, this is interesting. There's this homunculus nebula here, this star. The Keyhole Nebula, the name is another name for the Homunculus Nebula, and I find that interesting considering like opening a gate into what? Who knows? But the star, this eclipse aligns with that keyhole. And an eclipse itself is a keyhole. It is a keyhole that's being opened and a door opening, a portal opening to your destiny, to your fate, right? And so I was like, all right, what the fuck was happening in 1843? I already knew that it was going to involve the occult just from the date. I was like, all right, I know some shit went down in 1843 when we had this great eruption. I know it involved the occult in some way because the 1800s is occult territory, right? It's when everything was popping off. You guys can come and read this. We'd be here forever if I really wanted to dive like all into this, but if you want to come, check it out. This is one to come and check out, okay? So, you guys know I always have like such high hopes of all the things I want to cover. So I was like, all right, what was happening in 1843? And I go to look up 1843. I'm looking at all the stuff that's happening. And I noticed that in September, Ada Lovelace, who is an occultist, a member of the Orphic Circle, and has a strong connection to several mystery school streams, the Rosicrucians, the Orphic Circle, and many others. In 1843, she translated the notes of this guy, his notes on Charles Babbage's analytical engine, which is pretty much a computer. I have a picture of it over here, I'll show you. So this guy wrote notes on this guy's kind of like invention. And it included an algorithm. And in 1843, she translated these notes and calculated a sequence of numbers. And this is regarded as the first ever computer program. Ada Lovelace is actually credited with being the first ever computer programmer of all computer programmers. There's a computer language that we still use to this day called ADA programming language, or ADA programming language, and it's named after her. Only a small piece of this engine was ever built, and it was built after she died, but she is responsible for all of the programming language that went on to build the analytical engine, which then is the precursor to all computers and all artificial intelligence. And before we get into her and a bunch of things over there on the websites, I want to point out that we have an Ada Lovelace Day, and every year on the second Tuesday of October, it is they celebrate Ada Lovelace and through the women. Okay, so let me just read this. Every year on the second Tuesday in October, the contributions of women to STEM are celebrated on Ada Lovelace Day. So they celebrate all the women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the realm of STEM, on Ada Lovelace Day, which is the second Tuesday in October. So whenever they do things like this, where it's like, oh, it has to be a Tuesday. They don't do it on a day. Like, it's not, oh, the 15th of October. No, it's the second Tuesday of October. So whenever they do things like that, I always assume that they are associating it with the planetary archetype of that day. So Tuesday is associated with Mars. It's Mars Day. So the second Tuesday of October is the second Mars Day in October. So I wonder if this is like a symbolic nod to the ideology and the belief that we came from Mars and that we need to get back to Mars, which is what a lot of the occultists that think they rule or attempt to rule our world believe. So I wonder if that's what they're trying to reference with this second Tuesday in October, making it Ada Lovelace Day. So she is very strongly rooted in the occult. She is literally known as the prophet of the computer age, the enchantress of numbers. And yeah, we're going to dive into her here in a second. Okay. So Ada Lovelace is the daughter of Lord Byron, who is also a very strongly rooted occultist in London. She was born in London, England, and she is credited for being like this genius when it comes to math and numbers. And she is credited with creating the first ever computer program. She has been called the first ever computer programmer. And she was a woman, and she was an occultist. Now, not only was she an occultist, but she was a child occultist. So, you guys gotta come and watch this video of the Dark Journalist. I haven't watched this in a long time. This video is from 5 years ago. I watched this a long time ago. I can't remember everything he said in here, but it was brilliant, and I'm gonna rewatch it tonight. But in this video, he talks about Ada Lovelace. He talks about how she is connected to the technology that is currently used at CERN. He talks about her connection to the mystery school stream of the Orphic Circle, which is a very strange mystery school stream from London, who specialized in children. So they would get young girls between the ages of, I think it's like 7 and 14, or maybe it's like 12 and 14. I can't remember, but in this like prepubescent, early puberty age, because this is when they would be in their most psychic years. They would have very strong psychic senses, and they would put these girls through all of these strange rituals that we don't actually really know about, but there is a book written by Emma Britton, who is another one of the girls in the Orphic Circle. This is actually where we get most of our information on the Orphic Circle, is from her. If you guys want to come and read this, I'm not going to read this. It's 6 pages long, but these are all quotes from her book in regards to the Orphic Circle and the sort of like rituals that they would do, and how she can't really kind of tell you exactly how they elicit the information from the girls, but I'm sure it's not always the greatest, considering most of the men who are members of the Orphic Circle, many of them were believed to be pedophiles of sorts. Let's see here. if you want to dive into the sort of occult ties to Ada Lovelace, you're definitely going to want to come watch this video. It's really hard to find information on that, and he's done a really good job of tying it all together. But she's pretty much responsible for the creation of the computer language, computer programming, and has a strong occult origin. I have a book on her that I have never read, but we're going to get to a page here in a second. So, okay, hold on. What are you doing? Give me that. No. No. Oh my God. No. You did not. Ow. Oh my God, you guys. I have all these giant bags of herbs and tea from Star West Botanicals, and he just ate into them. A bunch of like black English breakfast tea. He's gonna be like bouncing off the walls. And metal leaves. Oh my God, they're all ripped open. It's everywhere. He normally doesn't get in any like real trouble. He's so good. We were just talking about how good he is. All right, so come watch this for the whole occult lens. Let's see. We're going to dive into her a little bit deeper, but I want to kind of point out some of these dates. So this is I want to talk about this. Okay, so the computer programming language that is named after her was used by the Department of Defense. So it's literally made for our government. So the Ada was originally designed by a team led by this French computer scientist from Honeywell, under contract by the United States Department of Defense. And it was used by many different government agencies and whatnot. They talk about it all in here. Obviously, I don't know where I can never find it, all the stuff. But it's strongly rooted in our government, right? Okay, so Ada Lovelace, the same year as that great eruption, created computer languages, right? Now, I have this book on, I'd want to kind of point out that literally just the other day, ChatGPT got an upgrade, and now it can see and hear and speak. And this is a direct line of progression from this moment in history that we're talking about right now. Now, this eclipse, today's eclipse, or the eclipse that we have on the 14th, is part of the 134 Saros cycle. So eclipses fall in Saros cycles that take roughly 1,200 to 1,500 years to complete. These eclipse cycles start at one pole and they slowly spin around the globe and end at the other pole, taking somewhere around 1,200 to 1,500 years to do that whole cycle. So eclipses in the same Saros cycle fall 18 years apart from each other. So every roughly 18 years, there's a new eclipse in a cycle. And each eclipse Saros cycle has anywhere from 69 to 87 eclipses in said cycle. So this current eclipse that we are heading into here is part of the 134th Saros cycle. And so I was like, oh, well, what other eclipses were part of this cycle? Well, let's click on it and look. The eclipse that happened in 1843, right after the Great Eruption, was part of the same Saros cycle. So the energy of that eclipse and the energy of this eclipse are part of the exact same cycle. So it's so interesting to me that I'm literally diving into this energy right now, into this time period right now. Also considering that the eclipse that happened 6 days before I was born, which was also an annular ring of fire solar eclipse, is also part of the same cycle. So the eclipse that fell around the same time as the Great Eruption in this area of the sky in 1843 is part of the cycle. Today's eclipse is part of the cycle, and the eclipse that happened right before I was born is part of the cycle. So no reason I'm diving into this stuff, right? All right, so this eclipse cycle, we're at the 44th eclipse in this cycle, and there are 71 in it. So it doesn't end until 2510. So we're in the middle of it, meaning we still have the opportunity to change the trajectory of this narrative, right? That started in the 1800s. So this eclipse cycle, so the solar cycle is rooted in two different like date breakdowns, right? So the solar cycle, it repeats, like I said, every 18 years. This one has 71 events, and it started in 1825 and it ends in 2041. This is what they say here on Wikipedia, but when I look at the chart, it doesn't seem like that's the case. It looks like it started in 1248 and it ends in 2510. So I spent a really long time trying to figure out what they are saying here, and I can't figure it out. But apparently those dates are also associated with this cycle. Now, definitely come and watch this. ChatGPT, Ada Lovelace. Okay, we're gonna go look at her chart here in a second, but before we do, I want to talk about this book. All right, so I have this book on Ada Lovelace. It's called The Enchantress of Numbers, The Prophet of the Computer Age. I have never read this book. It has been sitting on my shelf for a really long time. I always figure I'll read it at some point in time. But this is kind of how I operate, is I have a huge library. And when subjects come up into my vision during these videos or whatever sort of rabbit hole dives I'm in the midst of, that is when I pull books and that is when I dive into them. And so I made a lot of these 1843 connections not very long before I went live, you know, and I was like, I don't have time to read this book. But as you guys know, especially on Patreon, I am really into bibliomancy. So I'll just like know there's something in a book that I need to see, but I won't know where it is in the book. And so I'll like bibliomancy it like you would pull a tarot card. And so I was like holding this book and I was like, all right, I know there's something in this book I need to see. I would flip it open to that page. And it flipped open to a page that was an entry from her diary from 1841. And I was like, okay, so this is all her writings. Like, I didn't even know what this book was. I just knew it was about her biography and about her life and about her works. It says on the back, Ada Lovelace was one of the first to write programs for and predict the impact of Charles Babbage's analytical engine in 1843. Beautiful, charming, and temperamental, Ada has often been characterized as mad and bad, as was her illustrious father, who was crazy. All of the stories tied to him that Dark Journalist dives into in that video are far out. Like, wow. The real Ada, in whose honor the U.S. Department of Defense named a computer language, like I just showed you. I guess I could have just read the back of this book to you guys instead of showing you all of those websites. Well, where would the fun of that have been? There'd be no fun in that. All right. So, in whose honor the U.S. Department of Defense named a computer language is even more fascinating than fiction. As his biography reveals, Ada was the 19th century woman with a foot firmly planted in the 21st century. And we're literally heading into a war the U.S. Department of Defense, that is going to be the most cyber and electrically charged, probably AI-driven war we've ever experienced, right? So I opened this book to a page from 1841, and I'm like, well, if there's entries from 1841, there's got to be something in here from 1843, which was when we had this great eruption, right? So the great eruption was in March. In February, the month before the great eruption, on February 7th, she started working on these notes. So she started working on translating them in February, the month before the eruption. Throughout the month of the eruption and the months after, she was working on translating all this computer language. And then in July, a couple of months after the eruption, she sent this letter to Charles Babbage, the guy who invented the analytical engine. Now she's working on trying to code it, right? She's working on trying to make the computer language for this machine that this guy invented. And she's working off of somebody else's notes. This will be important when we get to her chart, because the eruption happened in her 7th house of relationships in Libra, opposite her Mars in the 1st house, which is the self. So she was really working with others, right? So get this. In July of 1843, she sent this letter to Charles Babbage, and this was the opening line. She says, "My dear Babbage, I am working very hard for you, like the devil, in fact, which perhaps I am." So literally, as she's writing the coding for the first ever computer program, right as we have this like seemingly supernova in the sky, this great eruption of consciousness, of ideas, she's referring to herself as the devil. Okay, that's kind of interesting to me, especially considering this eclipse is conjunct the asteroid 666. And www that we have in front of like every website, right? You can't go to a website without hitting www. Well, www in Hebrew is 666. So like literally everything we do on a computer or computer program, from what we're talking about here, what we're doing here, to advanced AI, is rooted in this 666 beast number and the devil itself, right? And so this moon is also conjunct Prometheus, that bringer of fire, that bringer of knowledge. And so this is when I ask, like, how are you using this knowledge, right? I would not be here piecing any of this information together. I would not be delivering it to any of you. I wouldn't even probably know about any of these things if it weren't for the computer in front of me. And so I'm not saying this is innately bad or innately evil, but I'm saying that it can be, and that many people are trying to create it to be. And so those of us who are conscious, we need to make sure that we're using this technology to its highest ability to help spread truth, to help spread knowledge, right? Okay, I have a chart here. I just want to show you guys really quick. I have it right here. No, this is the eclipse. No, this is my client's chart. Don't look at that. Okay, so here's her chart. The great eruption happened here in her 7th house of relationships, others, business partnerships, contracts with other people. And it fell opposite her Mars in the 1st house, that motivating, driving force to, code, right? Okay, there's like a bunch more I wanted to say on this whole Ada Lovelace thing, but I feel like we've been on it forever. But in short, this eclipse is conjunct the area of the sky where we had the Great Eruption in 1843, which was then this eruption of consciousness, right? This onslaught of the technological, scientific, materialist movement, and as well as the occult revival, which literally spawned from there. This is when all of theosophy and anthroposophy and everything was really being created. And actually, it was more so when a lot of the creators were out there learning all of the stuff that they would then use to create their mystery schools. But the eclipse that we have now is part of the same Soros cycle as this time. So the fate and the destiny and the karma of this time is coming up again, right? This is why we see this rise of AI. This is why we see the Department of Defense aspect behind this, right? All rising to the surface again. And I find it really interesting that Ada is used to reference all of the women in STEM, considering she was literally one of the first like MK Ultra victims. So a lot of the mind control techniques that were later used in MK Ultra or other sort of programmings originated in the Orphic Circle. A lot of the sort of trance-like states that these young girls were put in, and a lot of the things that were learned through those rituals were later used by the powers that be in MK Ultra like research or mind control programming. Okay, I want to just point out this before we go anywhere else. This is another video that I would love you guys to come and watch of Gigi Young. This is where she talks about MK Ultra. And she talks about the Alice in Wonderland Persephone mythology and how Persephone is one of the asteroids that is conjunct this moon as well. Persephone and Alice in Wonderland has its origins in the Orphic Circle. You guys could come watch this too to hear a little bit more about that. But Alice in Wonderland and Lewis Carroll was a member of the Orphic Circle. Emma Britton, who I showed you the book that she wrote earlier, was one of the tabs that's gone now, about the Orphic Circle. She was one of the muses for Alice herself. And the Alice story is, of course, strongly nowadays associated with MK Ultra programming, but in this video, Gigi Young does a very good job of talking about why they use Alice in Wonderland, why they use butterflies, why they use these certain archetypal symbols, and it's because they are so strongly rooted in our psyche. She talks about how the Alice in Wonderland myth is a modern retelling of the Persephone myth and the initiations that happen in the underworld. Persephone and her mother Demeter are associated with the Eleusinian mystery rites, where you would take some sort of hallucinogenic substance, particularly during the fall months when you're entering into the dark half of the year, and you are met with the goddess ultimately through these like initiation into your consciousness, into your subconscious, into your unconscious, into the projections of it, much like Alice in Wonderland. And you rise back up again in the spring, reborn, much like a butterfly rises out of its chrysalis, reborn into something new. These are profound symbolic expressions, and that is why they're used. That is why they're twisted. That is why they inverted. That is why they are used to program us, because they are the stories as old as time, right? And these ones are particularly rooted in the initiation of the feminine parts of our psyche. Alice, Persephone, and then even Ada Lovelace and the Orphic Circle, and that is why they anchor onto that archetype in STEM so strongly, because they want you to know that these are the origins of it. They are occult in origin. Okay, I could talk about this forever, and I really wish I said a lot more things, but I feel like it's time to kind of get back to the slides. But yeah, in 1843, computers were invented, and now AI is going to be the background of this World War III we are all entering into. The world is... The Aries Libra eclipse cycle is going to strongly revolve around war. As much as I don't want to like help manifest it into being, this, you can logically look around and see that that is where humanity is headed. Okay, we still have a whole bunch of aspects and transits and stuff we want to talk about. In short, this eclipse is part of the same Soros cycle as the 1843 eclipse, as the eclipse that happened right before I was born. The Great Eruption happened in 1843. At the same time, we had this eruption of occult thought and computers that literally eventually resulted in AI. Okay, definitely go watch the Dark Journalist's video. All right, let's talk about this eclipse. What time is it? Okay. Hi, Nikki. It is, what time is it? I can't see. Okay, it's only 10:30. It's only 10:30. It's only been an hour and a half, and we're just getting to the chart, you guys. All right, so this eclipse falls here at 21 degrees of Libra, conjunct this in the sky. And it's also conjunct the asteroid Persephone. Now, Persephone here in Libra, she loves to be here. This is her realm, right? The realm of balance. She represents the balance between light and dark, much like Libra itself. And this is the time of the year where she is entering in to the underworld, right? She is entering into the underworld. Literally, Persephone is here in Libra, entering into the underworld as we ourselves are entering into the winter months. Now, I always like to point out this mythology a little bit. All right, so Persephone's myth, like most myths, I think, are misunderstood. Persephone is often considered to be like kidnapped by Hades and taken and pulled down to the underworld. Now, Hades in and of himself gets a bad rap. In my opinion, Hades is my favorite of the male gods of the Greek pantheon. Now, a lot of people look at Hades and they just assume he's like Satan. He's the devil, right? He governs the underworld, so he must be evil and bad. But Hades was just one of the brothers of Zeus. They were just Hades, Poseidon, Zeus. They were all brothers, and they all worked together to defeat Kronos, their father. And then when Kronos was defeated, now they have the world. And so they need to split it amongst themselves. And it's Zeus who decides how that's split. And Zeus is like, well, I'm going to be the sky god because that sounds the most badass. Poseidon, you can be the sea. Hades, you can have the underworld. And Hades is like, yo, bro, I don't want the underworld. I want to go on Mount Olympus with all of you guys. And he's like, too bad. You have the underworld. So then Hades is pretty much like banished to the underworld where he doesn't even really want to be. And he's a little miserable. And Venus, the ruler of Libra, who is over here in Virgo right now, the ruler of Libra, Aphrodite or Venus, she eventually kind of feels sorry for him. And she's like, oh, poor Hades. He needs a girlfriend. And so she sends Eros, or Cupid, her son, and she's like, yo, Cupid, can you go shoot Hades with an arrow and make him like fall in love with some chick? And Eros is like, sure, I'll go do that. And so he shoots him with an arrow of passion. And after he gets shot with his arrow of passion, he sees Persephone and he falls passionately in love with her. And he does technically kidnap her and pull her to the underworld. But unlike all the other gods who would literally have just raped her with zero accord, regardless of if they were shot with an arrow or not, he did not. He instead wooed her, and she fell in love with him. And she spends half her time in the underworld and half her time in the upper world with her mother, Demeter. And she comes in and she is reborn, and she very much represents this goddess of heaven and hell, much like her progenitor, Inanna or Ishtar from Sumerian or Babylonian tradition. Persephone is the Greek representation of the descending and ascending feminine consciousness. Hades and her, they had a pretty decent relationship. There are a couple little arguments or fights or issues here and there, but for the most part, they are one of the more healthy relationship dynamics in Greek pantheon. You certainly cannot say that about Zeus or Hera, and Poseidon was just literally running around raping everybody, much just like Zeus. So in my opinion, Hades, he gets a bad rap. So Persephone is headed into the darker half of the months. She's headed into Scorpio, into that underworld, and into that passionate, alchemical intensity of Hades, right? And she is conjunct this lunation. Now, Persephone, the archetype, is innately tied to Ada Lovelace and the Orphic Circle and the Alice in Wonderland mythology and those deeply feminine mystery rites that modern mind control programming is trying to alter and twist and use against us, but that our soul very much remembers, right? And so I love that she is conjunct this moon and conjunct the south node, because the south node is associated with the past. The south node is actually associated with a couple of things, and we're going to reference another astrologer's work here in a second and look at what she has to say about the south node. But traditionally, the south node is known as the tail of the dragon, and it is said to be associated with the past, a portal to the past. I call the north node the pathless path of destiny. It's pointing towards what it is we're working to develop. And the south node is a portal to everything that's already been developed. It's a portal to the past. Everything our soul has connected to previously, all the way back to source itself. So it's rooted in a lot of the karma, a lot of the baggage, a lot of the lessons we still need to work through, but also all of the wisdom and initiations and knowledge that our soul has acquired in times before. And when we have an eclipse conjunct the south node, this information is flowing into our consciousness, especially with Mercury so close by. It is very strongly flowing into our mind. Mercury is also aspecting a bunch of things. It's sitting in exact opposition to Chiron at the time of this eclipse. Chiron over here in Aries, it's in an exact opposition on the day of the eclipse. And so this information that is coming through is meant to help us work through a lot of these core wounds. And these are the core wounds that revolve around our primal senses. This is the energy of war. This is the energy of hate. This is the energy of aggression. This is the energy of the fight or flight. And this is the energy of our vital life force energy that we can ascend, right? So Aries, the energy of Aries is the spark of life. It's the spark of consciousness that is a very base level. It's very strongly rooted in like our reptilian mind. Fight, 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 or flight, or fuck, right? That's Aries. And these wounds revolve around our primal animalistic instincts. And so this is what's really bubbling up within our collective mind right now. We're seeing this play out on the world stage, and this is also going to play out within our relationships. Now, Chiron has made it to 17 degrees of Aries. It's been transiting through here since 2018, and it's done a lot of the healing already. It's alchemized a lot of the wisdom, and so we could very much step into that. That's where we get on the thumbnail where I ask the question, will we rise above our fuck-headedness? We definitely have the ability to do so during this time, but we're going to have to learn some karmic lessons in the process, and we're going to have to step into some of the wisdom that we've acquired over the healing that's transpired since 2018. Okay? So the sun and moon are conjunct that fixed star we've been talking about, the great eruption. It's conjunct Persephone. It's conjunct the south node, which is literally this portal to the past. It's very close to Mercury, which is in an exact opposition to Chiron. And it's also conjunct several other asteroids, which we'll get to at the end. But before I do, I want to just dive into this here on the south node while we're talking about the south node. So this is from Astrology. She is a very fabulous astrologer who has a massive YouTube channel where she makes videos, and she also hosts other astrologers' content through her channel. And I always love her view because she's a lot like me, where she references several different cultures, astrological lenses. She's not strictly rooted in a Vedic tradition or a Western tradition. She looks at many different traditions. So this is what she has to say about the South Node, which is often vilified. This is probably why, was it you, Mela? One of you is scared about this moon. This is probably why you're scared about this moon, because the South Node is often vilified. It's associated with endings, brutal, painful endings. And I don't think that that's true. And again, my South Node is conjunct my sun and the supergalactic center. So I might be biased, and I want to look for the higher octave of this point, and she does a great job of breaking it down here. So she says the South Node is vilified in Western astrology as a point of weakness in the horoscope. In your natal chart, it's said to be associated with everything your soul brings with you from the past. All of your karma, all of your lessons, all of your habitual programming, but it's everything you're really good at. It's all of your talents. It's all of your wisdom. It's all of the lessons you passed in the past. And so it's very comfortable, and it's very easy to express that South Node. It's hard to embody your North Node, but your South Node is the fuel that you use to embody your North Node. It is not a villain. It is not a weakness. It is your superpower that is meant to propel you towards your North Node mission. You're not meant to get stuck there. You're meant to use it to fuel your North Node mission. So the stuff happening at the time of this eclipse is fuel for the Aries North Node we are all working to trek towards in whatever area of the sky Aries governs in our chart, okay? So the South Node is vilified in Western astrology as a point of weakness in the horoscope. But in ancient Bulgaria, this symbol meant a person with open hands towards the sky, connecting with and receiving the power of spirit and cosmic intelligence. The North Node represented a person with legs wide open and standing strong on the ground. The North Node shows our connection with the earth, with the material. We receive because the North Node is our mission we came here to do on Earth. The South Node is rooted in where we came from, which all of our past incarnations and the shit we bring with us, yes, but we came from source consciousness. We came from the cosmic intelligence itself. So that we access through our South Node. The North Node represents a person with legs wide open, standing strong on the ground. The North Node shows our connection to Earth, to the material. We receive the divine spirit and inspiration through the South Node, which is the most spiritual point in the horoscope. And have to manifest it on Earth as tangible results with our North Node. So we take what the South Node gives us, what we've acquired through it, and we use it to fuel our North Node. That is why you often will see the house position of the North Node as a place of external results, if well integrated. The treasures of the South Node are invisible externally. It's spiritual, it's etheric. But this is from there that the power and inspiration for the North Node manifestations is derived. You use the South Node to fuel the North Node. The South Node brings the divine fire, and the North Node the South Node brings the divine fire. The North Node clothes it in matter. That's, of course, the highest meaning of these points. So see, it's not bad. All right, we're going to look at this other post that she has here on the Mars-Sun cycle since we're here right now. The Sun will conjunct Mars on November 17th. And so that's what she's talking about here. So she says every 2 to 2.3 years, a new set of problems and troubles appear to mobilize the world and our minds and energy. This corresponds to the cycle of Mars. When Mars joins the Sun, a new Mars pattern is imprinted. Let's look back in the last few years. In September 2019, Mars joined the Sun in Virgo, the sign of health and disease. We know what followed in the next 2.5 years. All focus was on the pandemic. Mars is the planet of focus, drive, motivation, right? In October 2021, Mars joined the Sun in Libra. Pretty much within 4 to 5 months, the focus shifted from illness to war and peace. The following 2 years, the world split into 2 factions. New, powerful economic alliances started forming. Western countries versus BRICS in the East. But Libra is a more gentle sign, so it never grew into a big world conflict. There was more of a rearrangement of trading alliances and economic powers. This is what Libra governs, treaties and international relationships. So now we are on the verge of a new Mars cycle, and we see the shifting energies. Just less than a month before the Mars conjunction with the Sun in Scorpio, which is next month on the 17th, the war in the Middle East erupted. Scorpio is a way more ruthless and deadly sign. The diplomatic gloves of Libra come off. No more negotiations, political and economic sanctions and such. Now, a real threat and destruction approach is forming. There are calls to arms, mobilizing multiple countries, calls for no mercy and total annihilation. Both sides are in a deadly grip. Extreme response and deeply emotional reaction becomes the norm. Got Scorpio. Clouding reason, spurred by revenge and power. There are hidden forces and motives at work too. Scorpio rules the vested and hidden interest of a small, powerful faction. It literally governs the occult and that which is hidden. While the Libra cycle was able to keep the balance, the Scorpio cycle is all or nothing. War, destruction, purging. Our qualities Scorpio carries. Will humanity be able to keep its humanness? Will we rise above our fuck-headedness? Rebirth after destruction and total transformation is also Scorpio. So we can be reborn and we can transform. This we've done before. This isn't transformation. Like, this is the Third World War. We've done this already. We did the First World War. We did the Second World War. It's expected that we do the Third World War. A true transformation would be doing something different. And we have the ability to do that in theory. All right. I love her work, you guys. Make sure you follow her. She always has such insightful interpretations. Okay. So this is what is conjunct this moon. We'll talk about these asteroids here in a second. All right, so sitting opposite this moon, we have the Earth. The Earth is always in opposition to the Sun. The Sun and the Earth always sit opposite each other in the chart, and they always rotate like this. So we always have an axis of opposition highlighted at all times. And at an eclipse, a lot of people forget to mention that the Earth is involved. If we didn't have the Earth, we wouldn't have eclipses. It's not just the Sun and Moon aligning. It's the Sun, the Moon, and Earth all in alignment, all in perfect alignment. And so the Earth falls here at 21 degrees in opposition to this eclipse in Aries. We also have the North Node there, with which Astrology just said is rooted in the material. It is rooted in the real world, is rooted in this earthly reality, as is obviously Earth itself. So I find that interesting. Look to see what house Aries falls in for you. This is where the North Node is transiting. This is where you are going to have huge, fated new chapters transpire over the next year and a half. We had Jupiter transit through here over the last year, and so there has been a lot of growth and expansion in this area already. We've had Chiron here since 2018, digging deep into our core traumas in order for us to alchemize them into wisdom and heal from them. And now we have the eclipses coming through to throw this area of our life into a whole new fated direction. Especially for those of us who have our nodes here, this is our nodal return. Fate and destiny are conspiring to set us on the path we came here to track. So this eclipse is not only in opposition to the North Node, but it's also in opposition to Eris, the goddess of chaos and discord, who is responsible for starting the Trojan War. I mean, she's blamed for starting the Trojan War. I find it interesting that we had the Eris COVID variant pop up right before this war in the Middle East popped off. It's like Eris kicked off this war as well. Now, Eris is just blamed for the war. She didn't actually start it. As the story goes, Eris, the goddess of chaos and discord, wasn't invited to the party. This is why I always say make sure you invite chaos to the party, otherwise she will show up. Expect the unexpected and find a way to roll with the somewhat chaotic energy. I mean, this is just a cardinal. I mean, this is it's an eclipse. Eclipse full. It's a new moon. New moons are intense. It's an eclipse. That makes it even more intense. It's a cardinal eclipse, which makes it even more intense. And that's in opposition to Eris, which has that chaotic energy about it. Now, as the story goes, Eris was not invited to a wedding when all the other gods and goddesses were. So she was kind of pissed off about it. And so she thought she'd fuck with them a little bit. And so she went and took one of the golden apples from the garden, and she wrote on it, like, to the fairest of them all. And she threw it into the party. And all of the goddesses started fighting over it. Hera and Aphrodite and Athena, they were all fighting. And they're like, I'm the fairest. No, I'm the fairest. No, I'm the fairest. And so they grabbed this poor guy, Paris, and they're like, yo, you need to choose who is the fairest of them all. And he's like, I don't know, I can't choose. And they're like, too bad, you have to choose. And so they all start promising him things. And he eventually chooses Venus, or Aphrodite, who promised him the hand of the most beautiful woman alive. Well, that woman just so happened to be married to the king of Troy. It's Helen of Troy. And so this eventually resulted in the Trojan War. Now, Eris didn't start that war. All she did was throw an apple into a party. The shadows of the gods themselves started that war. The need to be the fairest of them all, the need to be worshipped, the shadows, the egos started that war. So keep that in mind while you navigate this weekend. I'm literally going to be at a concert with my mother and my sister from Friday the 13th to the 15th that involves a road trip. God help me, please. The finger of God, please help me. I'm going to try to be on my best behavior because I know that shit can very easily pop off. This is laying up in the area of the sky where they had the great eruption. It is in opposition to Eris, the goddess of chaos. Things can either just get crazy and fun, and you can try to harness this energy to spend time with your loved ones in some sort of like unpredictable, maybe even spontaneous way. But keep in mind the energy is intense and somewhat chaotic. So prepare for the unexpected. So Chiron is in opposition to Mercury. We're definitely working through those wounds. Chiron is retrograde right now, and so these are really like our internal wounds, those wounds that revolve around our core aspects of identity, right? Our base level consciousness, our animalistic instincts, the self, the persona, the individual, the North Node. And then the North Node is conjunct the Andromeda Galaxy. So this is the black hole at the center of the Andromeda Galaxy that is shooting towards the Milky Way Galaxy and is going to collide and unite. It is a fated, destined collision of the self with another. And the Andromeda mythology, which we talked about very heavily in the last Patreon video, and really several Patreon videos. So those of you who are Patreon members, you have access to that. But the Andromeda mythology revolves around divine partnership. The astronomy does, two galaxies uniting. And the mythology does too. Her mythology revolves around the alchemization of deep core wounds, liberating ourselves and freeing ourselves from the chains that bind us through fated divine partnership. Okay? Now this North Node is also conjunct the asteroid Lachesis. I'm probably pronounced that wrong, but she's one of the three fates. She is the fate in the middle that is responsible for deciding how long our thread is. So she is the fate that allots our time. And then the final fate will cut the thread and put an ending to our life here on Earth and this current narrative we are playing out here in our incarnation. So this is the fate that is responsible for deciding how long our thread of fate is. And at the time of this eclipse, it's conjunct the North Node. So the hand of fate and destiny itself, the North Node, is conjunct the asteroid of fate, which is associated with deciding how long our thread is. And depending on how this Aries Libra eclipse cycle pans out, depending on how these international conflicts pan out, depending on how the next couple of decisions humanity makes will determine how long our thread is, right? Okay. So sitting in a square to this eclipse, it's a wide orb. It's over at 27 degrees, but it's in a pretty tight orb to the nodes themselves is Pluto. Now, Pluto just stationed direct on the 10th, on 10/10. Pluto's stationed direct at 27 degrees, 53 minutes of Capricorn. Literally like 20 minutes away from an exact conjunction with America's Pluto, which is at like 27 degrees, I think 33 minutes. I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's like literally right here. So Pluto it was going retrograde, and it made it almost back to an exact conjunction with America's Pluto. This is when it stationed direct. This is when RFK was announcing his independent run too, and he has a massive Capricorn stellium right here. Oh my God, I almost want to pull his chart and show you guys. It's freaking crazy. But he has a massive Capricorn stellium there that just houses like a ridiculous amount of his planets, all on top of Pluto, all on top of America's Pluto. I really think he could be a massive catalyst for change. Or America's going to kill him like they killed everybody else in his family. One way or the other, it's going to either go, it can go as a huge transformation or a literal death. But Pluto stationed direct on the 10th in a square to this eclipse. Pluto, the planet of power, the planet of destruction, the planet of transformation, the planet of change, which is here in Capricorn. It literally governs the control system, systems of authority, government, institutions, and the power moves of said institutions that are transpiring in the world right now. Now, looking to see where Capricorn falls in your chart will give you a little bit of idea of how this is playing out for you personally. Wherever Capricorn falls, Pluto has been transiting through there since 2008. And it's at this tail end of this transit. It finally, for good, moves out of Capricorn in November 2024 after finishing this trek in this sign since 2008, completely transforming that area of your reality. Wherever Capricorn falls in your chart has been completely alchemized since 2008, and this is the tail end of that transformation. This is the tail end of that story, and this eclipse cycle, which sits in a square to Pluto, is the catalyst for that profound culminating ending. Now, this is also sitting in a T-square to a couple asteroids, the asteroid Sphinx and the asteroid King. The asteroid Sphinx has a lot to do with riddles and the paradox and questions, and not jumping to conclusions and not jumping to answers, which I think is going to be a key theme to navigating these world events, much like it was with COVID. We can't all assume that what we're being told and what we're seeing is true, and we can't jump to an answer, right? So the Sphinx, the lessons of the Sphinx are twofold. The first lesson of the Sphinx is not to jump to answers, not to jump to conclusions. The second lesson of the Sphinx is if you're going to answer, make sure you think outside the box, because if you think literally, if you think it's straightforward, you're going to get the answer wrong and you're going to die. Because as the story goes, at least in the Greek myth, the Sphinx is, so Orpheus, who is the deity strongly tied to the Orphic circle that we were talking about earlier. The Orphic circle is tied to the Orpheus mythology and his trek into the underworld, which to me is kind of dumb considering he did fail his quest in the end. Orpheus, his wife, died, and he went down into the underworld to save her. And he goes down in the underworld and he's presented with a couple of things. First, he is presented with the Sphinx. And he has to answer a riddle. And if he answers the riddle correctly, he can move on, where he then meets Cerberus, the three-headed dog, and he has to play him some music so that he can get beyond into the underworld in hopes of saving his wife. We see that same motif in Harry Potter when he goes down into, when he goes down to get the not in the Chamber of Secrets, when he goes down to get the Philosopher's Stone in the first book, and he has to distract Fluffy, the three-headed dog, with the harp. It's the same myth. J.K. Rowling uses a lot of Greek mythology references in that book. So he sees the Sphinx, and the Sphinx is like, yo, bro, I got a riddle for you. If you answer it, you can move past me. If you answer it wrong, though, you die. So the first lesson of the Sphinx is it's better not to answer and to just like turn around, walk away, and live to see another day. Because if you jump to an answer and you're wrong, the Sphinx is gonna kill you. At least in this myth. So the first lesson: don't jump to conclusions, don't jump to answers, or you die. You know what I mean? Metaphorically speaking. The second lesson is, well, you better think outside the box if you want to answer correctly. So here's the riddle. What walks on what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? And the answer is a human. Because in the morning of its life, when it is a baby, it crawls on 4 legs. In the afternoon of its life, when it is an adult human being, it walks on 2. And in the evening of its life, when it's old and it needs a cane and it's all decrepit, it walks on 3. And so you can see, if you think literally, you would never get to that answer. But if you think outside of the box, you can get there. So Orpheus passes the Sphinx. He passes Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, by playing music. This speaks a lot to music, helping us process our inner world, our underworld, our unconscious. The things that are inexpressible through words alone can very much be expressed through poetry or music or whatnot. And then he's looking for his wife, right? And he's trying not to get caught by Hades and Persephone. But he eventually does get caught. But the thing is that Hades and Persephone are lovers. And so they feel for him. And they're like, okay, Orpheus, you can have your wife back. But on your way out, if you look behind you to make sure she's there, then she has to stay here and you don't get her. And of course the dude looked back. He looked back on his way out, and then he saw his wife vanish before his eyes, and so he didn't get her. Orpheus did fail his myth. But Harry Potter, he got that Philosopher's Stone, and it has a similar energy about it, going down into the abyss to obtain that spiritual boon and then coming back out again, reborn, right? So it's interesting that the moon is conjunct Persephone, and the Sphinx is here, which is tied to that Orphic circle and Orpheus in general, the Orpheus myth. And then we also have the asteroid King in a square to this. Interesting that it's opposite Pluto, the planet of power, over here in Capricorn, the realm of the establishment. And then we have the asteroid King sitting in a square to this very tense, war-torn eclipse energy. And it just speaks that it is like the ego, or really it is the subconscious, because it's in Cancer, probably the repressed aspects of the subconscious of the king archetype within our reality, right? Authority figures, authoritarian organizations that is the catalyst right now for a lot of the actions and agendas that will be implemented over the weekend. I expect there to be major events over the next couple of days. Friday the 13th precedes this eclipse. Friday the 13th, particularly October Friday the 13th, was the day that the Grand Master of the Knights Templar was executed. The Freemasons claim their lineage dates back to the Knights Templar. The warrior monks who fought in the Holy Land supposedly found the Holy Grail under Temple Mount, which is where a lot of this current war is transpiring, is this particular area of the world where the Templars were meant to be these warrior monks protecting pilgrims on their quest to the Holy Land. So October Friday the 13th is tied to the Knights Templar, and in turn tied to the Freemasons, and they love to tie agenda to Friday the 13th, particularly when that Friday the 13th falls in October, We have a Friday the I looked it up. We have a Friday the 13th we have a Friday the 13th that falls in October, roughly every 11 years. Sometime 6 years, with a 6-year gap. The last one we had was in 2017, October 13th, 2017. And on that day, Trump decredited the Iran nuclear treaty. And now we're headed into a war in the Middle East. And Lindsey Graham is literally saying that we should bomb Iran. So definitely connected. That 2017, we also had a massive eclipse in 2017 that went all the way across America that we could, again, all see with our special glasses. Millie says the Golden Dome is what they're after. Absolutely. They're all fighting over Temple Mount because they need to destroy it so that they could build their third temple, which is part of their end of days prophecy. I've been diving all into this in the stories on Instagram, and I plan on tying everything together into a video here on YouTube, but I'm just so bad at doing that. You guys really need to make sure you're following my stories, because seems to be where all the good stuff is, and I can never seem to compile it into a video because it never stops. It just keeps going. But I have a bunch of rabbit holes that I'm in right now. You guys, the Lionsgate rabbit hole, I really dove back into that, and man, have I found some stuff, and man, have I tied it all together. It's crazy. I definitely got to make that video sometime soon. But yes, they're definitely after the Dome of the Rock. Okay, so this moon is also being aspected by what is known as a yod, or a finger of God aspect. And that is created with two quincunxes, or sometimes they're called inconjuncts. Quincunx, and then two planets that are sextiling each other. So Uranus retrograde at 22 degrees of Taurus is quincunx this eclipse, as is Neptune retrograde at 25 degrees of Pisces, quincunx this eclipse, and then those two are sextiling each other. Now, a quincunx is an irritating aspect. It's a disconnection. Rick Levine calls it the pebble in your shoe. It's annoying. There's a disconnect. Something needs to be dealt with in order for it to come into alignment, much like a pebble in your shoe. Now, it's not annoying enough. It's not triggering enough like a square that forces action. Like this Pluto square is going to force some sort of action. It's a catalyst for action. A quincunx is annoying, but it's not annoying enough to force you to act. It's much like a pebble in your shoe. You can keep walking with that fucking pebble in your shoe, and you can keep being annoyed by it, and you can do nothing about it, and it'll always be there as this irritating force. Or you can sit the fuck down, take your shoe off, take the pebble out, and realign yourself. Now, the way you realign yourself with these two irritating energies is you look to the sextile. So Uranus and Neptune are working harmoniously together. They're both in an irritating aspect with this eclipse, but they're working harmoniously together. And if you could use this harmonious, free-flowing energy between these two planets, that is how you can rectify this energy. Now, a finger of God aspect is said to be this finger of fate, this finger of karma. It is strongly rooted in like generational energy and karmic energy that is rooted in, like if you see it in somebody's natal chart, if you have like a yod configuration in your chart, this can indicate that like you incarnated to work through a lot of your ancestry, a lot of your lineages, generational bullshit, right? What's his name? RFK is a good example. You see how he is like following in his family's footsteps, and he's trying to do it's like almost like a karmic thing. Like he feels like he has to step into this role. He has a yod in his chart. Now, Neptune is retrograde in Pisces and Uranus is retrograde in Taurus. Neptune is conjunct the asteroid Pandora. This is actually Pandora's box. And it's in Pisces. Now, when Neptune, the planet of confusion and illusion and delusion and spirituality, is retrograde, we're able to pierce through the fog and access clarity. In Pisces, this is spiritual clarity. Now, Uranus is associated with rebellion and erratic, fanatical behavior. It's associated with liberation and freedom. And right now it's retrograde and it's an aspect to this moon. So that energy isn't able to express itself fully. It needs a recalibration, right? And much of this is happening internally. We still have a lot of planets retrograde. Saturn is retrograde. Neptune is retrograde. Chiron is retrograde. Eris is retrograde. Jupiter is retrograde. Uranus is retrograde. So a lot of our growth right now is happening on an internal level. Jupiter is actually sitting in a trine with Mars. That's on the Mars, Jupiter retrograde. Oh, that was earlier. That's when it goes into the later. Okay, well, Mars is over here at 13 degrees of Taurus and it's retrograde. I mean, not Mars. Jupiter is at 13 degrees of Taurus and it's retrograde. Jupiter is associated with our growth, and right now we are growing internally. We are accessing wisdom on an internal level, and we're doing so through this spiritual lens that's really... Whenever Neptune is retrograde, I always say that it's like our rose-colored glasses shatter somewhat. The fantasy, the illusion that we have built around our reality shatters in order for clarity to come through. So Uranus and Neptune, in mundane terms, are associated with the opposite ends of the political spectrum. Uranus is said to be associated with right-wing ideology, freedom-focused, erratic, fanatical. It's also associated with like revolution and rebellion and progress and technology. So it does have that essence of the left about it as well. Now, Neptune is said to be associated with left-wing ideology because it's somewhat delusional, it's very idealistic, it's very pulled by or manipulated by its heartstrings and this illusion of compassion, right? And so we have both of these sides of the spectrum aspecting this moon right now, and they're both in an irritating aspect to this eclipse. The realm of religion, the realm of spirituality, the realm of revolution, the realm of rebellion, the realm of technology, the realm of the spiritual dimension. They're both in an irritating aspect to this eclipse, but they fucking want to work together. They want to work together. And this is what we need to come into alignment, is a balance between technology and spirituality, between right-wing ideals and left-wing ideals, between forward movement and spiritual connectivity. We need a balance between these two, between the mad genius and the sympathetic mystic. We need to find a middle ground. And what better time to find the middle than a Libra eclipse? This is where we can be balanced between the light and the dark, the yin and the yang, the two sides of the spectrum. And this finger of God, this yod, this point of fate is aligning with, is pointing at this eclipse. And it really wants these two seemingly opposite energies to work together. And they want to work together, but this isn't a trine, it's a sextile. And sextiles are harmonious aspects, but they're not as free-flowing as a trine. A trine will just work together. The energy is free-flowing. It's working as one. A sextile can, but it requires a little bit of effort to get that harmony, to get that benefit. So we have to work to make these two work together, but they want to, and that's what's so beautiful. So look and see, where does Pisces fall in your chart? What house does this fall in? Where does Taurus fall in your chart? What house does this fall in? These two areas of your reality are trying to work together, and that, if you can get those two to work together, that is how you can rectify this opposition of the North Node, the South Node, the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon, and even let's bring in Chiron and Mercury. This is how we can rectify this opposition, is by getting Neptune and Uranus to work together, finding a middle between those two extremes, ultimately. Okay, I just want to make sure I said the stuff here before I go to the next slide. Okay. All right, so a couple of the other asteroids that are aligned with this moon. Israel and Crimea are exactly conjunct this moon. Crimea is, the bombing of Crimea, or the missile attack on the warships in Crimea, and the helping to orchestrate it by the U.S. is the stunt that Putin is the most pissed off about right now, and probably the reason why the war will escalate, at least here in the West, and why America will probably be pulled into it. He is very pissed off about that, and he wants to retaliate, and he has stated that many a time. Crimea, the asteroid Crimea, is conjunct this lunation. The asteroid Israel is conjunct this lunation. We can already see how that is transpiring. I expect there to be huge developments in regards to this narrative throughout Friday the 13th and the 14th. I expect there to be big news. This is also conjunct the asteroid 666. Do with that information what you will. It's actually the asteroid Desdemona, which has the word demon in the middle of it, and the asteroid catalog number is 666. And Desdemona is a character in a Shakespearean play, and it's synonymous with the word demon. And nowadays, the word Desdemona is often used as a synonym for the word demon. So I think that is interesting, considering all of the apocalyptic biblical prophecies they are attempting to manifest through their current power moves, ultimately. This is also conjunct the asteroid Prometheus. So Prometheus is kind of like the progenitor to Lucifer, and then even Satan and the devil, right? Prometheus in Greek myth is responsible for stealing fire and bringing it to the humans. He steals fire, he brings it to the humans so that they can have knowledge. Much like we bite the apple so that we can have knowledge. And then all kinds of shit transpires. We fall from the Garden of Eden into sin, right? Prometheus steals fire for the humans, and Zeus gets really pissed. So he punishes Prometheus. Later, Prometheus is saved by Chiron, who sacrifices himself in favor of Prometheus because Chiron is wounded and he can never truly be healed because he is wounded by the blood of the Hydra, and he himself is divine, and this blood of the Hydra is very poisonous, so he never actually dies because he's part divine, so he just feels pain constantly. So Prometheus is being punished and having to have his liver picked out by an eagle, I'm just kidding, the Pluto on America's sun, the eagle, picking out Prometheus's liver, and Prometheus is punished, and then also humanity is punished, and the punishment is Pandora. So Prometheus is punished by having his liver picked out, but he is ultimately saved and released from this punishment and Chiron takes his place. Chiron, the wounded healer, alchemizes his wounds into wisdom, into knowledge. Prometheus, that flame of knowledge, which we can use for the good of humanity, much like we can use this computer and this technology and the knowledge that we can find through the interwebs for the betterment of ourselves, for the betterment of humanity, for the betterment of our reality, or for its detriment and destruction, right? Now, Zeus is pissed, right? And he's like, oh no, you gave the humans freaking fire. Now I have to punish them. And so his punishment is giving Pandora a box. So he gives Pandora this box and he tells her, don't open the box, knowing that he was setting her up for failure and that she was going to open the box. Now, of course she opens the box. And in this box were all of life's horrors. Anger and greed and rape and war and hatred and destruction and all of life's horrors. And so she opens this box and all of life's horrors are flying out of the box. And she freaks out and she closes it. Now, Pandora is a lot like Eve. Eve ate the apple, original sin, woman bad, now everything is shitty. Pandora opened the box, woman bad, now everything is shitty. But the narrative doesn't really make sense because at this period in Greek mythology, when Pandora was handed the box of all of life's horrors, all of the things that she supposedly let out of that box, rape and murder and war and greed, all of these things already existed and the gods themselves were partaking in all of them. So she didn't let these things out into our world. She let them out of their repressed box for us to see within ourselves, within the human condition, for us to address these parts of ourselves, these parts of the gods themselves, these archetypal expressions themselves, and face them within ourselves. And so she didn't let these things out into our world. It's not woman, it's not original sin. She showed us, she released these repressed parts of ourselves for us to address, for us to work through, for us to see within our reality. Now, everything was flying out of the box and she freaked out and she closed the box and she trapped one thing in there, which was at the bottom of the box underneath all of life's horrors. And we couldn't get to it if she didn't open the box and let out all of life's horrors. But this thing is still in the box and it's trapped. So a lot of astrologers will call this the asteroid Pandora, and some will call it Pandora's box. I call it Pandora's box because it looks like a box. And according to the myth, there's only one thing left in this box, and that is hope. Hope was at the bottom of the box, with all of life's horrors piled on top. We couldn't get to hope if we didn't work through all of these horrors. So when people say, oh, you don't want to open Pandora's box, yeah, you kind of do. Because the only thing left in that fucking box is hope. Everything else has been let out for us to address within ourselves and society. We have to move through that on our way back to the box, opening it and releasing the hope that was trapped in there. So this box of hope is sitting as part of this finger of God aspect, and it is conjunct Neptune. And then we have Prometheus here conjunct the moon. So both Persephone and the Sphinx and the Orphic mysteries are all those players are here. And then we also have Prometheus and Pandora as also part of this eclipse. Pandora is conjunct Neptune, that planet of psychic senses, of dreams, of spirituality, of mysticism, which is piercing through the mystic dimension right now, being as though it's retrograde. It is piercing through, it is cutting through the fog, and it is seeking spiritual clarity, and it is aligned with that box of hope. So while the moon is intense, we have this faded finger of God aspecting this box of hope and this ability to really come into alignment. But this eclipse is so guided by the hand of fate and destiny itself when it comes to our personal reality and not like the crazy chess moves of the powers that want to be. When it comes to our personal reality, this moon is really geared towards the alchemization of our karmic patterns when it comes to relationship dynamics, the wounds of the self that stand in the way of that. It revolves around union, it revolves around spiritual clarity, and accessing that box of hope. But it will involve profound transformation, particularly over the next year and a half. Okay? All right, let me just look at my notes and make sure I said all the things, and then we'll go to the cards. Okay, we talked about all of this, and all of that, and all of that. That's from the cards. Okay. All right. So you guys know I always like to pull my cards from all my favorite decks. I'm gonna go watch that Dark Journalist video again about the Ada Lovelace. I haven't seen it in a couple years, but I remember it just blew my mind. I was like, what the hecking shit? Okay. But I have to leave at the crack of dawn with my mom and my sister. You guys, this was my idea. I love Peter. We're gonna go see Peter Gabriel. I absolutely love Peter Gabriel. He is one of the last musicians that is like my favorite, who I have not seen in concert yet. My mom also loves him, and so I asked my sister, I was like, we should get tickets. He's touring. He had a new album come out. He's playing here in LA on the 13th, which is tomorrow. And we'll get tickets and we'll go. And you can fly out here from Vegas. And she was like, or he's playing in Palm Springs on the 14th. And we can do a road trip and we can stay in an Airbnb and make it a 3-day extravaganza. And I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. And I did not look at the astrology. And then I noticed, I was like, oh my God, it's an eclipse. And I'm going to be with my mom for 3 days. And my mom is like a literal crazy person. I love her so much, but oh my God, her childhood was a freaking nightmare. And it shows. It definitely shows. So everybody pray for me, please. All right, let's dive into the cards. So the archetype that came out is the shaman. We are at a Libra eclipse, and it's Libra season. We are heading into the darker half of the year. We are heading in to the underworld, just like Persephone, just like Orpheus, just like Harry freaking Potter. We are on our quest. I need to make my picture show up there. Why isn't that showing up? Come on, where's my... It always does this. Sometimes that, like, one of the pictures will disappear. My Libra stellium needs my aesthetically pleasing slides to be the way I made them, so you'll just have to hold on a second. There we go. Okay. We are heading into the period of darkness, to the period of the underworld. Right now we're at this period of balance. Not only are we in Libra, the sign of balance, but we have the sun, the moon, and the earth all in alignment, all in harmony, all in balance, right? Creating this beautiful ring of fire eclipse. So let's go ahead and read this shaman card from the Archetypes guidebook, but this is the archetypal energy of this eclipse, much like Persephone aligned with it, diving into our inner world. We can really unlock a lot of esoteric and spiritual truths in the process that will revolve around going within. We got all those retrogrades, it's no surprise. The shaman, 93. And also it's an opportunity to show how much you have grown over the years, right? Pretty much over the past 18 years since the eclipses kind of fell in this same area. We've grown immensely over that time into a role of wisdom, right? The shaman has been through some shit. The shaman has seen some shit. The shaman has accessed a certain level of consciousness, right? And an eclipse is a profound portal that opens. That you guys know me, I am convinced that a lot of the mainstream pop astrology views The views on retrogrades, the views on eclipses are fucking psyops. The fear that bubbles up in the collective around eclipse energy is mind-blowing to me. I mean, I was born smack dab in the middle of eclipse season. My sun is conjunct the nodes. I love eclipses. I have to. I have no choice. But it seems like other people fear them. And I think there's no reason for that. These are these portals of fate and destiny where the luminaries meet and literal portals awaken. Portals that can show us the depths of ourselves and our reality. Okay, so the shaman. The shaman, the magi, the sorcerer, the medicine woman. 3 archetypal ingredients constitute the shaman, and all must be present in order to reveal its magic. First, the shaman is activated by long-standing and diligent study, the mentor. Second, its orientation is generously and accurately aimed towards the healing of the self, Aries, Chiron and Aries, right? The healing of the self, the other, Libra, and the culture. This is the archetype of the healer. And third, the shaman has a knack for finding doorways into the other world, allowing psychic visions and old magic to leak into this world, into the unseen. In this way, the shaman is a master who bridges the everyday and the sacred, revealing potent power needed desperately in our time. Yet, where there is power, there is shadow. So the shaman must be vigilant in studying their darkness. This card reminds us that the force of healing is ultimately not our own. We must shape it and share it with the world. That speaks a lot to the Mercury, communication, sharing, information, opposition to Chiron retrograde in Aries. The shaman cannot be rushed. Working with this archetype requires study and perseverance. Think of it like marinating. The content must permeate every fiber of its being. Contrary to popular belief, the shaman archetype appears in every vocation. Teachers, directors, surgeons, politicians, and poets are just a few of the faces a shaman may wear. When this archetype is evolved, it is a fearless student and practitioner. But in its lower archetype, it can represent over-promises, blames, and hurting self and others. So that might be something we see on the world stage. But for those of us who have been doing like the work on ourselves, right, we are really embodying that fearless student of the mysteries. All right, so this is the archetype we're working to embody. How do we do that? So I pulled some cards from my other deck. Where is the book for it? Is it in here? No. Oh, it's under the fabric I just bought. Okay, so the first card to come out was Shadow of Earth. Covetous designs. This is no surprise considering we are at an eclipse that this shadowy energy is archetypally present, right? So this deck is called the Wild Harmonic Oracle. It's broken up into all of the different elements: earth, air, fire, water, the celestial realm, the spiritual realm, the dimensional realm, and the shadow realm. And each card is a mixture of 2 of the realms. And it says if you pull a shadow card first, that it's a sort of blockage, something you're trying to work through. And to then pull another card to see how you do that. So this is the first card I pulled. It's something we're working through, and this is how we'll do that. I think this is interesting considering all the different fingers of God that are aspecting this moon, whether it be the finger of God nebula that falls aligned with it, or the finger of God aspect pointing at it. So Shadow of Earth. in the shadows. I can't find it. Okay. Shadow of Earth. As the shadow consumes the earth energies, the compulsions of lack overtake us. Obsession that arises out of a feeling that there will never be enough for everyone. This card is an indication of viewing life as having limited resources for one to utilize, and a turning towards the fear of needing to establish an absolute sense of security, all the while not realizing that it is the very intensity of lack one is feeling that is keeping the security at bay. When I feel like I won't have enough, I put myself into the position of reinforcing that probability. To overcome this perceived doom, I habitually return to such feelings in order to put myself on a path of merciless materialism. While there is a feeling of power in such paths, they also addict us to the poison of always needing more. The South Node has that energy too. Inquiry. In what ways do I think there is not enough for me to have what I need? Okay, so we have shadows coming up around this time. Shadows here on Earth, shadows here within our reality, shadows around possessions, shadows around security. How do we work through that? And the card that came out is Celestial of Water, Empathic Offering. So this is celestial energy that is rooted in the water element. So this is intuitive, this is compassionate, this is spiritual, and rooted in empathy and the offering of such. So I'll go ahead and read this from the book. Remember, Libra is the sign of others. So we'll definitely be entangled with other people during this eclipse, and to try to lend an empathetic, I don't want to say ear, but just like an empathetic energy, right? Okay, so as the celestial energies embody into the flowing feeling of life, the depth of healing relations emerges. So healing relationships. Giving, making an offering of oneself, finding where my needs and the needs of the world meet, and going there with passion. This card is about one's calling and how it materializes as being of service to others, Libra. We also have Venus in Virgo, which is all about being of service to others. This is not a dogma of self-sacrifice, but a genuinely self-interested desire that is received in the world as something others need. This is doing what I truly love and realizing that it is the path of highest service to all as well. I love this card. Drinking from the well first so that I have strength allows me to then carry the water to others. No one benefits if I collapse, depleted, spilling the water I would carry to nourish others. So I sit with this and allow my actions to reflect both this wisdom and the knowledge that what nourishes me will nourish others. With this knowledge in mind, I bring the water I sought for myself, having drank deeply, to the world. Inquiry. What is it that I nourish myself with that I can offer to the world for nourishment? Okay. Before we read this card, I just realized that I didn't even talk about all of these. I didn't talk about these two. And this drinking of the well reminded me that I didn't talk about these two asteroids. So this moon is also conjunct the asteroid Isis, which is of course associated with the Divine Mother, Isis, the guardian of the veil, the guardian of the mysteries, the realm that we're about to enter into, that dark half of the year. Isis is associated with the Divine Mother, right? Also, of course, is associated with the terrorist organization, so I would not be surprised if some shit pops off, considering the many terrorist organizations are calling for a international day of terror on October the 13th. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something from them. Now, I want to point out this one. This moon is also conjunct the asteroid Galahad. Now, Galahad is one of the knights of the Round Table. He is one of the knights that went on the search for the Holy Grail. Interesting that we're talking so much about this area of the Holy Land, because it's believed by some, not me, but by some other people, that the Knights Templar found the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail under Temple Mount, which is the focal point of this war right now. Now, Galahad was one of the knights who went on the quest for the Holy Grail. He was one of the two knights who actually found the Grail. Percival the naive fool, he also found the Grail, but he was unable to ask the proper questions, and so it disappeared before his eyes. Now, Galahad the Pure, Galahad found the Grail. Galahad was strongly aligned with the goddess, which is what the Grail represents. Galahad found the Grail, drank from the Grail. So in some of the myths, he found the Grail, and the minute he saw it, he was just overtaken by the divinity of it, and he immediately died in absolute bliss. In some other tellings of the legend, he actually drank from the Grail, and then the same thing happened. He died in bliss and went back to God, or whatever it is that the Holy Grail represents. Singularity with source consciousness, right? So Galahad is aligned with this lunation. The one knight that actually finds the Grail successfully and moves on to whatever's next, right? So we have the knight who was able to acquire the spiritual boon, the Philosopher's Stone, the Holy Grail, the Axis Mundi, whatever it is you want to refer to this as. He found it, and he's aligned with this eclipse. So regardless of whatever war, whatever sort of destruction, whatever sort of apocalyptic narrative the powers that want to tie to this eclipse, it is strongly rooted in the spiritual quest that we all are partaking in as human beings. And that's that quest back home, ultimately. And Galahad is conjunct this eclipse. So I love that. I love that asteroid being there. I'm glad I came back and finished this slide. All right, so the last card is from the Spiritual as Fuck deck. 99 inspirational cards for people who fucking need some inspiration. And the card that came out is Rise Above Your Fuckheadedness. This is going to be my mantra as I spend the next couple of days with my mother. Rise above your fuckheadedness. This is all those Aries placements, particularly Chiron there, who has learned a thing or two and is ready to step into some of that wisdom. Can we rise above our fuckheadedness? And on the back it says, we're all fuckheads in our own way. The trick to winning at life is developing the ability to identify your own flavor of fuckheadedness and then to rise above it. What one little thing can you do different-ish and better-ish today, you beautiful fuckhead you? I love these cards. They're so perfect. I use these with my clients. These 3 decks, I use these with in all my sessions to close out my sessions. By the way, I am booking clients right now for November. I'm sure my website is linked down below somewhere. Save your spot now. You can order today and save your spot for November. There's a couple of spots still available. And yeah, we'll close out with this lovely poem here from the Honeycomb Planner by Ophelia. And this is the one for Libra. It says, I am the key. Oh my God, that's so crazy that this aligns with the Keyhole Nebula or the Homunculus Nebula, whatever you want to refer to it as. I'd like to refer to it as the Keyhole Nebula, unlocking balance and harmony, right? Anyway, I am the key that fits into each heart's unique shape, unlocking soft portals of relational elegance. I am energized by the divine play of artist and muse, finding my true heartbeat in the pleasures of collaboration, allyship, and co-creation. So much like Ada Lovelace collaborated with those two men to create the computer that I'm now talking to you on, and that ultimately resulted in the AI infrastructure we see rolling out all around us and the beast system. We have the ability to collaborate and co-create with those around us. And Libra's main archetypal expression is otherness. It's pleasure, it's collaboration, it's allyship. It's the beauty of the other and how that other can make us so much more of ourselves, how we can really develop the self through the interaction with other people. All right, guys. Well, thank you for being here with me. Wish me luck over my next couple day extravaganza. We covered everything already, I believe. Yeah, we covered everything. We got the cards. We got all the charts and all of the notes. Well, have a good eclipse. I hope it treats everybody wonderfully. If you guys want to book a session for November, it's linked down below. If you're watching this on YouTube and you'd like to join Patreon, it's also linked down below. There's also a couple of free videos linked down below, including the one I did on black holes. And maybe I'll link a couple more after this. I'm not sure if I'll get around to it. But thank you guys for being here, and I will see you guys over on Patreon for the next eclipse, because we are in the middle of eclipse season. So we have the Libra eclipse on the 14th at 21 degrees of Libra, and then we have the final eclipse in the Taurus Scorpio eclipse cycle, which is a partial lunar eclipse that falls right before Halloween on October 28th at 5 degrees of Taurus. So we'll be talking about that. We'll probably be talking about the Taurian meteor shower, how that's most likely responsible for the Great Flood, which most likely happened on Halloween, which is why there are so many religious observances across the world spanning multiple cultures that celebrate the death in mass from late October to early November. So we'll be talking about that when are we meeting? The 26th. So the moon is on the 28th, and we'll meet on the 26th here on Patreon to dive into that eclipse and its connection to all the things I just announced, that area of the sky and whatnot. So I hope to see you guys there. If you'd like to join Patreon, you can join it on a sliding scale. Like I said, you can pay whatever you want. I have tiers starting as low as $3, and you still have access to all the videos. So even though it doesn't say that on the Patreon itself, you can join the smallest tier and you still have access to everything. I unlock them for everyone. You just pay whatever it is that you can afford. I know times are freaking tough. Inflation is a motherfucker. Everybody is broke, including me, which is why I have to put this behind somewhat of a paywall so that I can pay my bills. I definitely cannot do that through YouTube at the moment. But thank you for those of you who help support this. I literally could not do this without you. It's definitely made possible by viewers like you. So thank you guys so much. And I will see you over on Patreon on the 28th. And those of you who are members of my course, the first 2 parts of lesson 3 on the 12 signs, the 12 houses, and the esoteric 13 that returns us to the one are now up. So we've covered Aries through Leo, and we'll pick back up sometime next week on, it looks like the 18th, with Virgo through however far we get. I don't know. We're already several hours in. It's a very deep PDF, 47 pages long. So if you're a course member, hop over to the course, check out those 2 videos that have been posted, work on catching up on those, and then the next installment will come out on the 18th. Well, it'll be recorded on the 18th. You guys know me. It probably won't be uploaded till like the 19th or the 20th or like the 21st or something. I don't know. It'll be uploaded eventually. But there are 2 there now. It's like about 4 hours worth of content. All right, guys. I will see you later. Have a great eclipse. And yeah, we'll talk later.